in Jacksonville, and then they have Perez, Luis Perez, who is very intriguing, from I believe it was Texas A&M Commerce or whatever. So
Yes, yeah.
they have some fun. They have guys there, but when you look at what Jared Goff did last year, I can't imagine he's gonna. I think he's just gonna keep getting better. I would hope so. So regardless, that season last year was better than anything Sam Bradford did, and I was actually a Sam Bradford fan. I wanted Sue in the draft, but I rooted for Bradford, and I just think what you saw to Goff last year, that's the best year a Rams quarterback has had since Mark Bulger really jumped onto the scene. Obviously you saw the flashes with Bradford, you saw the flashes with Austin Davis, but Mark Bulger really jumped onto the scene and really pushed Kurt Warner out. That's that's the only thing I can really think of is the last time I've seen a season like what Goff did with the Rams.
Yeah, and you're talking about a 22-year-old kid who is only going to get better, and he's look at the coach that that he's working with, and the kind of talent that he has around him. It's all lining up for Jared Goff to put together a pretty nice run here. And I've been not a fan of his, but you could tell even in his rookie year, even when he was getting pummeled, the kid had something, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle there because of how bad the team was and how poorly coached it was, and we could go on and on and on with with how he got shortchanged his rookie year, and a lot of it fell onto his shoulders. Nationally, I think that was what the narrative was. And I just remember thinking, no, that's not the problem right there. He's going to be part of the answer. It's everything else that's around him, specifically, the head coach and offensive coordinator, all good men, but just to me in over their heads. And we see what a competent, I wouldn't say genius, but just a high end offensive minded head coach and staff can do for somebody that has a lot of talent. And it's interesting, though, the backup situation, because, right now, obviously, it's Sean Mannion, and he's going into the last year of his contract. This is his fourth year, with the Rams. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. They've got so many guys that they have to, take care of, in their own free agents that, I don't see anything happening with Sean this year, trying to re-up him to keep him around at least as the backup. And I would think, he wouldn't mind having some pretty good preseason games and maybe, some mop-up duty performances that, can set him up as a guy like, you look at some of the quarterbacks that have gone from backups to now potential starters in their current situations. I'm sure he was looking around the league and seeing, was A.J. McCarron? Is that who it was?
Yeah, that's that's what I would have brought up.
Yeah, went to Buffalo and got paid and a little bit at least, and has a chance now to really legitimately compete at least 1 year for a starting job before they hand it over to their high draft pick. But if I'm Sean Mannion, that's probably what I'm kind of secretly hoping for. And at the worst, you come back as the backup. But I wrote a story last week about what we saw with Nick Foles in Philadelphia and Case Keenum. Ironically enough, I guess both of them were ironic for the Rams, but Case Keenum in Minnesota, how neither team really missed a beat once those two guys had to fill in for injured starters. And is Sean Mannion, do the Rams have confidence in him that he's going to be able to do that if, God forbid, something bad happened to Jared? And I guess that's just a question that, they don't want to have to be answered at all. But if it comes down to it, it'll be interesting to see, is he up to that standard? But I wouldn't expect him to make any more moves at quarterback behind Jared. I think there's just too much that they have going on that's probably not going to happen. But after this year, if some other team decides, hey, Sean Mannion, we're going to give you an opportunity to be a starter with us, then the Rams are going to have to start looking at their backup quarterback situation a little more serious than they did this year.
Absolutely, and just like before we we wrap this up, I just gotta say, how crazy is it that what difference a year makes? I mean, the national media they're talking about Sam Darnold #1 in the Rams the next year in the draft. They're talking about Todd Gurley isn't the guy, and all this stuff, and Sean McVay is too young, and it's just it blows my mind how a year. Jared Goff was in the running for MVP as a dark horse. Todd Gurley probably should have won MVP, and Sean McVay was Coach of the Year. So, I mean...
And Aaron Donald was in Defensive Player of the Year.
Exactly.
And Gurley was the Offensive Player of the Year. So, I mean, it's crazy, but, I tell people this all the time, in talking to the Rams people this time last year, there was a conviction that I think would have probably surprised people outside their building. But their conviction was, we truly believe that we hit a home run with Jared Goff, and we truly believe we've hit a home run with Sean McVay. Now, obviously, that has to all unfold and all has to happen. But if it does, the way we think it will, then there isn't going to be a team better set up than us to make a nice prolonged run with a young quarterback under control contractually, and just you have that base covered, and a young charismatic head coach, offensive minded head coach who players will want to flock to come play for, and you're seeing that come to fruition. You're seeing that conviction come to fruition, and I don't think that there were many people nationally, probably especially long-term Ram fans, who would have shared that conviction. But inside that building, they did believe that was that they had a good chance. They put themselves in that position with Goff and with Sean McVay, and it looks like they were right for sure.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's been it's been a long time, since the Rams they had an off season like this where we're talking about backup quarterbacks as just like insurance, like, I mean, that was the norm, Vinny. We were talking about, like, is Keith Null the guy, or, should they, should Mark Bulger, or, maybe this Kyle Bowler kid that we just got over from, Baltimore. Like, that was the conversation.
Kyle. I covered Kyle in high school.
How about
that?
By
the way. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
That's just, that was the conversation.
Well, yeah, it shows you, yeah, and things change in the NFL. I mean, very quickly in sports in general, but it certainly did almost overnight. It seemed for the Rams, and now the whole conversation is completely different. And I'll tell you what, I'm at minicamp, and granted it's just minicamp and OTAs, but just eyeballing it, the level of talent is incredibly higher now. Just eyeballing it, when you see Peters and when you see Talib and when you see Sue and Michael Brockers and obviously Aaron's not there, but you envision that, and you look at Todd Gurley and Brandon Cooks and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and Jared Goff. These are star caliber players. And 2 years ago, I remember walking around training camp in Irvine, California, going, "Where's the star power? There's no star power here." And Todd Gurley was on that roster, and Aaron Donald was on that roster, but it just, everything else just seemed, and maybe it was, they didn't have any perimeter weapons whatsoever, and you can tell, and it just seemed like this is not good. This isn't good right here. And to fast forward 2 years and to see a team where you're like, okay, this is, I'm not a general manager, I'm not an NFL head coach, but I could see this team has tremendous talent, and it's way beyond what they had a couple of years ago, and you'd be hard pressed to go through any roster of any team in the league, and that could match up from position to position. This is a really talented team, and obviously they have to do it on the field, but it'll be fascinating to see how that all plays out starting in July.
It sure will. Hey, thank you so much, Vinny. I really appreciate you taking the time, a lot of time to talk Rams football and get down to the gritty details. I do appreciate it. Not everyone is knowing about these, UDFA linebackers, but I love, touching on all that because you just don't get that type of content from, NFL Network and whatnot. So, I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. And I'm check back with me in training camp so we could get a better idea of some of these young players that they're going to have to count on here sooner rather than later.
You got it, Vinny. Hey, take care, my man. We'll be in touch.
All right, you too.
All right, guys, that's going to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed. For Jake Ellenbogen, he's Vinny Bonsignore. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast, and we will be back Thursday with another Throwback Thursday edition of the podcast. All right, until then, take care, and have a great week. Later.
When will you save me, Los Angeles? When will you save me?